Now, Ian, Brexit, it's hitting the headlines every day, I have to say. I have to ask you, what do you think the impact of Brexit will be on smaller unquoted companies?
Well, I've spoken to our portfolio companies, of course, specifically, and most of those are companies that are British companies. Typically, most of their sales are in the UK at this point of time. And asking them about it, their main concern actually is around people. So particularly for the tech-related companies, they tend to have a fairly high proportion of EU nationals on their payroll. And of course, part of the growth of any company is expanding the payroll, particularly in areas like marketing and technology. For example, one of our portfolio companies has said that they've already seen a 50% drop in applications for jobs from EU nationals just since the referendum vote because of the uncertainty that's been created. So that's the main problem we're seeing operationally. Longer term, there are mitigants to that. I'm sure that ultimately we'll have well-defined rules on what immigration from the EU looks like, who can and can't, and what the skill level thresholds are. I'm sure there will also be immigrants from outside the EU, and of course British people can be upskilled as well to fill the jobs. And finally, on the more positive side, obviously the healthcare related companies are hoping that they will continue to see some real increase in NHS spending in particular as a result of Brexit.
Yeah, I think that uncertainty is clearly having an impact. Rodney, Brexit, what are your views on its impact?
Yeah, that dreading word. So I would say that what's really surprised Foresight is the SME community has been surprisingly resilient in the face of Brexit and in the face of the uncertainty, in the face of the paralysis of our government. They've just carried on creating jobs, carried on innovating, carried on growing. And that's been really, really encouraging. Notwithstanding all of that, I think we have seen some changes sort of emanating through our portfolio. I think the first thing is that clearly the weaker currency has helped. A number of our businesses in our portfolio are export-led, and so actually that's been a net positive in many cases. I think in terms of negatives, we've had to be a little bit more cautious, particularly being mindful of the risk of increasing tariffs and the risk of clogging ports. And so in some cases, I take an example of a business that I'm involved in, a specialist manufacturing business in Kent. We've had to stockpile products to ensure that if in the event of a no-deal Brexit and some confusion or some disruption, that we can still continue to export goods to some of our international clients. And so we are taking steps to mitigate the risk, but clearly uncertainty is not helping.
No. John?
Well, I mean, Brexit obviously is a very important topic. If I look at the companies that generally we are invested in, and as I said, I mean, if you take the companies I mentioned, like Weeding Tech, which is environmental, Simpronics, healthcare, Essentia, they're actually all selling as much in the US and in the Far East as they are in Europe. And I think one thing that actually is true, it has never been that easy for small companies to sell in the EU. It's actually quite hard to get into France or Italy or wherever.
Is that because they're quite closed markets?
They're not easy markets to get into. There seem to be hurdles for smaller companies that presumably don't apply to the bigger companies or aren't such a challenge. Whereas you find that companies now, the generation of companies coming through will have products, services, business models which are global. And they will be selling in the US, they'll be selling in the Far East, they'll be selling in the Middle East. And I mean, we're seeing that. And actually, when I've spoken to our companies, Europe is, by and large, Europe is not that important a market for them. Where it hits is, I think, as was said, the uncertainty about employment status. Now, my expectation is that actually people, qualified staff who are here, will be fine. I think that's probably true. But actually, if you are one of those individuals, you're nervous, you're uncertain. And I think that is unhelpful at the moment, and I hope that we can sort that out fairly quickly.